Today I think we'll talk a little bit about why academic philosophy is not necessarily the cultural integral centerpiece that I think it thinks it is, and that to stray away from it is probably the most beneficial thing you could do. Being involved in something that's so rigid and static means that necessarily you come to a point where there's a recursion and a retrograde digression, I suppose, of its external both communication but also its internal goals, and what it actually seeks to do and how it seeks to do it is obviously broken down when you separate the human side from the I suppose objective and empirical side, and this even goes for, I think, very irrational philosophy as well as the most rational philosophy, say analytical philosophy, or as postmodern philosophy, because you have to consider that one is so stuck in its groove that it's incapable of flexibility to change other than on a very formal basis, and is unable to capture the zeitgeist and the current, I'd say, philosophical milieu that's being experienced by actual people in actual society. And on the other end, you have absurdism and neo-Hegelianism, whereby people feel that they can just spout off any claim whatsoever because of their subjective natures, and that there's no necessarily any criteria for which they have to satisfy their beliefs and ideas, and that this is somehow ingenious, or it's somehow a testament to their own intellectual capacity, or it's delivering truth that I think, whether or not they actually believe they're delivering truth, is secondary to their desire to be important and a touchstone for all their followers, to remain a important figure in their movements, and all these very self-aggrandizing and I think egotistical behaviors very well encapsulated by people on the postmodern side of philosophy. So, like I say, you have an entrenchment and an incapability of creativity on one side with the analytical and post-analytical and those neo-philosophies which involve lots of logic and analyzing of moral situations in abstract, and then on the other side the absurdity that can be derived from that neoclassical French school of thought, the post-World War II philosophy for what we would probably could term leftists and materialists and people who like to live subjectively. So what we can perhaps learn from this is that philosophy may be best done without these rigid guidelines on both sides, and that you may find your appeal to classic and neoclassical philosophy is much stronger when reading a lot of I'd say pre-World War II philosophy. For me, there's been an indelible scar left upon philosophy since World War II, particularly Western philosophy, in that there is no capability for creativity outside of a very fixed sphere of understanding. So what we can garner from new philosophy is rehashes of old thoughts and old methods and old ideas in new lights with any amount of different perspectives and parallaxes, but nothing that's actually unique and nothing useful. So for me, I would either that you don't read post-World War II philosophy unless it's in a manner that's for critiquing perhaps, or to perhaps understand why I mean what I say when I'm saying it right now, because you'll notice that whether or not they can help it, all philosophers will now be in the mindset of someone who had to live post-World War II, whether that was directly influenced by it or was influenced by people who were influenced by it secondarily, and then obviously to the nth degree you have this carryover of a turmoil and distraught and all these other feelings of inadequacy and moral guilt, which I think is polluting any sort of creativity that one might tend toward new philosophy and new thinking. This also pervades politically, socially, economically, because obviously these are all offshoots from philosophy in general, and provided that one allows oneself to think that it's still in touch with philosophy, their field perhaps is also stagnant and stale given its post-World War II slump in creativity. We seem to be very fixed on what is good and what is bad and what is currently the most optimal method of interacting with each other, and so I think we're worse off for that. We as a society have not continued to improve upon ideas but stagnated. We find somehow that democracy is the best method of governance. We find that somehow free market capitalism is the best method of undergoing social interactions when it comes to money and fiscal matters and goods and supply and demand of resources. And then socially, we have considered that progression for progression's sake is somehow the current modus operandi of our society, and that should be taken to its logical conclusion for whatever reason. So, like you can see, there's a definite undercurrent which pervades modern society in all applied philosophy, and I say that in full well knowing that we call it social sciences, given that there's nothing scientific about humans at all, and we have no models which can accurately predict human activity, and so it's kind of a useless term in that sense. And so I think to some, I would recommend that you definitely pursue philosophy as a school, because it's definitely the most beneficial for any agent in the modern world to abide by, having their philosophy be generated by people who were in touch with human nature and understanding themselves, and perhaps adding to their ideas with their own input. I think it's very important to be educated like that, but to be bogged down in modern philosophy allows oneself to be subsumed by the ideas, and to a point where creativity is stifled because you're operating in a very narrow and unflexible sphere. So I think that is my recommendation.